I never should have gone into that house. It stood at the end of our street, a hulking ruin of rotting wood and broken windows. Everyone in town knew the rumors about it, how old Mr. Blackwood had lived there all alone, how one night the house went completely silent, and how no one had seen him since. Some said he just disappeared. Others claimed he still lurked inside, watching, waiting. It started as a dare. My friends, always ones to test each other's nerve, challenged me to step inside and spend just 5 minutes alone. It's just an abandoned house, I told myself. Nothing to be afraid of. I wish I had listened to the gnawing dread in my gut instead. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air changed. It was thick, heavy, pressing down on me like a wet cloth. The walls groaned, and the floor creaked under my weight. The dust swirled around my feet, disturbed for the first time in years. The scent of decay filled my nose, sharp and almost metallic. A single candle flickered in the hallway. I froze. Who had lit it? The house had been abandoned for decades. My breath hitched as I took a hesitant step forward. The candle's flame shivered as if in response, casting long, twitching shadows along the walls. Then I heard it. A whisper. Low. Raspy. Right behind me. My blood turned to ice. I spun around, but no one was there. Just the yawning darkness of the house, its walls seeming to pulse as if they were breathing. My chest tightened as the whisper came again, closer this time, curling into my ear like icy fingers. You shouldn't be here. I bolted. Or at least, I tried to. My feet wouldn't move. The air thickened, pinning me in place. My heartbeat pounded against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. The whisper turned into a chuckle, dry, cracked, almost delighted. A figure emerged from the shadows at the end of the hall. At first, it looked human, but as it moved closer, I saw it wasn't. Its limbs were too long, its fingers gnarled like tree roots. The face, oh God, the face, was stretched and hollow, a mouth too wide, filled with jagged, rotting teeth. Empty sockets where eyes should have been, yet I knew it was looking right at me. It reached for me. I finally found my voice and screamed. My legs unlocked, and I staggered back, fumbling for the door. My fingers closed around the knob, but it wouldn't turn. The thing drew closer, that awful laughter wrapping around me like a noose. My vision swam, my mind spiraling into a fog of panic. Then, just as its clawed hand brushed my arm, the door flew open. A force yanked me backward, and I tumbled onto the cold, damp grass outside. The air was fresh again, the weight crushing my chest suddenly lifted. I gasped, scrambling to my feet, heart hammering. The house stood silent, dark, as if nothing had ever happened. My friends found me minutes later, shaken and pale. They swore they'd only left me alone for 30 seconds. But I know better. I know I was in there much longer. And I know someone, wanted me to stay. I never should have gone into that house. And I pray no one else ever does. Darkness pooled inside it, deeper than it should have been. And then, 2 pinpricks of red light flared within the void. The whisper turned into a wet, gurgling laugh. A shape stepped out, too tall to fit in my closet, yet somehow it did. Those same hollow sockets, that impossibly wide grin filled with rotting teeth. It had followed me. The air turned to ice. My breath came in shallow gasps. I forced myself to move, rolling off the bed with a thud. My legs barely worked as I scrambled for the door, clawing at the knob. The thing moved closer, slow and deliberate, savoring my terror. The walls of my room trembled, pulsing like a beating heart. Just as I yanked the door open, a hand, long, bony, with nails like daggers, closed around my wrist. Pain lanced up my arm as I was pulled backward. My vision blurred with tears, my throat raw from screaming. Then, the thing spoke again, its voice slithering through my mind like oil. You belong to me now. I don't remember what happened next. My parents found me outside, curled in a ball on the front lawn, drenched in sweat, my wrist bruised and aching. They said I was screaming, but they couldn't wake me for hours. I moved out of that house a month later, but it didn't matter. It still visits me. In the dead of night, in the silence between heartbeats, I hear the whisper. I feel its gaze. And I know one day, it will come back for me. I never should have gone into that house. But worse than that, I never should have left. After that night, sleep became a distant memory. Even after moving to a new house across town, I never truly escaped. The whispers followed me. The presence lingered. Every shadow felt too dark, every silence too loud. I kept my closet door shut, but somehow, every morning, I'd wake up to find it open. At first, I thought it was my imagination. Stress. Trauma. But then the bruises started appearing. Thin, finger-shaped imprints on my arms, my legs, my throat. Like something had been holding me down in my sleep. The worst was the one on my wrist, where it had grabbed me that night. No matter how much time passed, the bruise never faded. It remained, a deep, ugly mark, as if it was claiming me. Then the sleepwalking started. One morning, I woke up outside. The cold grass pressed against my cheek, dew soaking my pajamas. My parents found me in the backyard, standing at the edge of the woods behind our house, staring into the darkness. I didn't remember how I got there. I didn't remember anything after lying down to sleep. But I wasn't alone. When they pulled me inside, my mother screamed. Muddy footprints trailed behind me, too many, more than just mine. Some were impossibly large, with long, clawed toes. Others were smaller, but distorted, like hands had pressed into the earth instead of feet. And worst of all, the footprints led back to the house, up the porch steps, and stopped directly outside my bedroom window. Something had been with me. After that, I refused to sleep. I'd doze off for minutes at a time, only to wake up gasping, feeling unseen fingers trailing over my skin, a breath against my ear. My reflection in the mirror began to distort. At first, it was subtle, a flicker in the corner of my eye. But soon, I'd catch glimpses of things that shouldn't be there. One night, as I brushed my teeth, my reflection didn't move. My body stiffened, toothbrush frozen mid-stroke. Slowly, my mirrored self lifted its head. Its lips curled into a slow, jagged grin, teeth yellowed and rotting. And then, in a voice that wasn't mine, it whispered. You left too soon. I shattered the mirror. The nightmares grew worse. I wasn't just seeing it in the dark, I was there, back in the house, trapped. In my dreams, the walls pulsed, the air was thick, and the whispers crawled under my skin like worms. And every time, the thing was closer. Reaching. Waiting. Then, I woke up in my old bedroom. Not my new house. Not my safe bed. My old bedroom, in the house I had sworn never to return to. The walls were rotting, the floor sagging beneath me. My closet door was open, wide open, and the darkness inside it pulsed, alive. My body refused to move, my lungs locked tight. And then I saw them. The figures. Not just one. Not just the thing from before. Many. They stood along the walls, shifting, writhing, their forms half decayed, half shadow. Some crawled on the ceiling, their heads twisted unnaturally, their empty sockets fixed on me. A chorus of voices, hissing, whispering, crying. Stay. 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 The closet darkness deepened, stretching out like clawed hands. Something massive stirred within, something that had been waiting. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. The figures moved closer, their feet scraping against the wood. And then, a voice, its voice, rose above the others, cold and sharp like broken glass. You belong to me. A hand shot out of the closet, long, gnarled, with nails like knives. It seized my ankle and pulled. I screamed. I fought. My fingers clawed at the floor, splinters digging into my skin. The shadows swarmed me, hands grasping, voices screeching. Just as the darkness began to swallow me whole. I woke up. In my bed. In my new house. But something was wrong. My ankle burned. Lifting the blanket, I saw the bruise, a deep, hand-shaped mark, fingers wrapping around my skin. Dirt clung to my sheets, filling the air with the scent of rotting wood. I wasn't dreaming. That was 2 nights ago. Now, as I write this, I can feel it. The air is thick again. My closet door, it's open. I don't remember opening it. I don't remember getting out of bed. But here I am, sitting on the floor, staring into the gaping, black maw of my closet, my fingers trembling as I type. Something is in there. I can see the outline of a figure, taller than the doorframe, shifting, breathing. 2 pinpricks of red light flare in the darkness. A whisper slithers through the air, curling around my mind like a noose. You never left. The walls pulse. My vision blurs. The air turns to ice. And then the hand reaches out again. I couldn't ignore it any longer, the cold, clammy presence in the room. The whisper that had crawled under my skin. The suffocating darkness that swirled around me like a living thing. The closet door was open, as it always seemed to be now, and something was waiting. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't help it. My heart hammered in my chest as I slowly turned my head. The figure, tall and skeletal, stood just inside the darkened doorway. Its form shifted like liquid shadows, never staying still, always flowing like it was made of the night itself. 2 red lights, eyes, glowed from within the blackness, their intensity piercing the void. It stared at me with an emptiness so deep, so cold, I felt my mind tremble under its gaze. Then it moved. Not in a way a human should. It slithered forward, arms long and unnatural, fingers elongated like gnarled branches reaching for the light. The air around me thickened, heavier, like the very oxygen had been sucked from the room. My breath hitched in my throat, choking me. And then, its voice. It didn't speak in words. No, it felt its words. Cold, sharp, as if they scraped through my very soul. You can't hide anymore. My body froze. My hands trembled. My legs felt like lead. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. It was as if the room had closed in around me, suffocating me, its presence filling every inch of space. A sickening crack echoed in the room. Something moved in my closet, something bigger. I snapped out of my paralysis with a sharp gasp. I had to get out. I had to. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The power went out. Darkness consumed the room, except for the dim red glow from the closet. The air turned icy cold. The silence was deafening. I ran. I scrambled toward the door, my hands outstretched, desperate to grab the doorknob. My fingers brushed it, but before I could twist it open, the floor beneath me cracked. A loud, guttural roar shook the walls, and I stumbled, falling forward onto the floor. I looked up. The figure wasn't in the closet anymore. It was standing right in front of me. It was impossibly tall, too tall, its head scraping against the ceiling. Its body was a grotesque mass of shadows, shifting and writhing, faces emerging from the darkness and disappearing in the blink of an eye. The red eyes pierced into me, cold and calculating. I was trapped. Then I heard it. A soft, distant sound, like scratching. Like claws dragging across wood. Slowly, deliberately. But it didn't come from the figure. It came from the closet. It was behind the figure, moving toward me. I couldn't breathe. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, staring. Watching. And then, a second pair of eyes emerged. Smaller this time. Two tiny, gleaming lights that peered out from beneath the figure's form, like they were hidden there, waiting. They blinked slowly, purposefully. I tried to scream. My throat closed up. I was paralyzed, frozen in place as the claws grew louder. Closer. Suddenly, the figure stepped aside, its shape distorting and shifting as it did. The closet door opened wider. And I saw it. A hand. A hand that reached out, impossibly long, with fingers that ended in jagged, broken claws, crawling out from the darkness like a spider. Its skin was translucent, its veins blue and pulsing, and its nails scraped against the doorframe as it pulled itself free. It didn't have a face. Not really. Just a twisted, gaping mouth that split open like a wound. The thing was featureless, yet its hunger was palpable. I could feel it, deep in my chest. I screamed. But nothing came out. I closed my eyes, shaking uncontrollably, my body trembling, but I could still hear it, the breath. The rattling, ragged breath coming from the thing. I felt it. The whispers wrapped themselves around me, clawing at my thoughts. You'll never escape. The hand reached for me, sharp claws grazing my skin, and then I woke up. I was back in my bed. In my new house. My room, my safe room. But something was wrong. The floor was cold. My bed, too cold. It didn't feel like I was in my bed at all. My eyes snapped open, and I gasped. I was no longer in my house. I was back in the old one. The one I thought I had left behind forever. The walls were rotting again. The air thick with the smell of decay. The wood was warped, splintered, the floor sagging beneath me as if it were breathing. My closet door stood open. Wide open. And the shadows inside it were deeper than before. Darker. I stood frozen, unsure whether I was awake, unsure of anything. The whispers came again, low and guttural, like insects crawling under my skin. Stay. 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 A creak echoed from behind me. I turned. The room had changed. The floor was cracked, the walls covered in mold and mildew, but in the far corner, where the floorboards were warped and bulging, something moved. Something was alive in the walls. I backed away slowly, my legs weak, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The thing in the closet was still there. I could feel it. The outline of its massive, shifting form loomed just beyond the threshold. The eyes. Those red eyes, glowing, watching. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut with a force that rattled my teeth. The walls closed in. A crack split through the floor, and something massive, crawled out from beneath. Long, slithering limbs pressed against the floor, like arms dragging themselves, the skin sickly and translucent. A scream echoed through the room, a voice that wasn't mine, but it sounded so familiar, so real. I scrambled to get out, but the house was alive. The walls shifted and warped around me, the very air pressing in on me. It was as if the house had swallowed me whole. And then I saw it. A figure in the hallway, standing motionless. Its body was a twisted mess of limbs and shadows, and its face was a mirror. A mirror with my face. Its mouth opened in a twisted grin, and the reflection on the glass smiled back, sharp and jagged. My reflection whispered. You left too soon. And then I understood. I wasn't the one who had left. The house had never let me go.